Well, so here I am again talking to you about my experience as a Jehovah's Witness. Well, I've told you a bit already on my first couple of videos, but due to my being a bit nervous because this is my kind of first time exposing this shit on YouTube, some of it may not be clear. So first of all, I think we should start with the basic beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses. First of all, I'm not going to go blabbing on about it because it does my nutting. The belief, the teaching about the blood transfusion idea. Everybody knows Jehovah's Witnesses don't take blood. Don't have a blood transfusion if they need extensive surgery where a lot of blood loss can be, where a lot of blood can be spilled. This is a teaching in the Bible, because in the Bible it says you must abstain from blood, drinking blood, and blood when an animal is killed or a human or blood is shed, it must just be spilt on the ground, and certainly not pumped into the body. Anyway, that's one of the beliefs. Other than that, they don't celebrate holidays: Halloween, Easter, Christmas, birthdays. Any of the typical holidays that most people enjoy and celebrate and use as an occasion to feel happy and often get a little merry. So they don't do holidays, they don't take blood, they don't go to heaven, they don't believe in hellfire. They believe that the new world, when it comes about after the Great Tribulation, which is, according to the Jehovah's Witnesses, due very soon, there will be a new world order where all Jehovah's Witnesses who have been faithful and given themselves to God, completely devoted their lives to Him and subject themselves to no other higher authority or religion, will enter this system. And approximately 1,000 years after the Great Tribulation, and consequently Armageddon, that will come later, they will have 1,000 years to live with their family happily, worshipping God, and new scrolls apparently are going to be unravelled, which means they'll probably be like something like a new Bible. Once this is done, this will teach them. They'll obviously have their leaders, as they do now, the governing body, which is the hierarchy in the congregation, and they operate from Bethel. Faithful and discreet slave. Most people who are familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses know these terms. Once in paradise, the place they're going after Armageddon, they are going to have 1,000 years to repair the earth and repair their minds, their souls, their hearts, and forget about everything else that happened in the old system, in the old world, Satan's world. And then after 1,000 years, they'll attain the state of perfection, which was intended for them initially with Adam and Eve. But obviously there was the fall, and that corrupted mankind, and sin came into it, and all that shit. And so there's a lot of damage that's been done to the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they want 1,000 years to repair themselves. Well, this is what they're given. They also don't believe that. They believe that God created Satan. Well, it didn't create Satan, but Satan initially was an angel who was of great standing within the celestial realm, and he offered his service to God. He fell due to his pride, and he decided to corrupt mankind. I have a different theory on it, which I'll explain briefly now. I don't want to be a slave, and many of you don't either. To be a slave means to be a follower. To be a follower means to be a sheep. To be a sheep means to follow the crowd. What happens if you follow the crowd? You become a robot or a puppet. Satan didn't want this. He didn't want to be reigning forever, for eternity, with Jehovah, who the witnesses claim is the name that Jehovah's Witnesses claim is how it's pronounced. It comes from the Tetragrammaton YHWH, and it's been translated, and it's basically the name that the witnesses call their God, Jehovah. So he didn't want to serve Jehovah. He didn't want to sing and raise fucking trumpets and shit with the other angels to God. He couldn't handle his position as a servant, and neither can I. And this is why I've had to escape the witnesses. I don't want to serve. I believe that everyone has the ability to serve themselves, and to serve yourself means to do what you wish to do. And this doesn't mean conforming. Conformity and compliance don't come into happiness, really. They don't. Those concepts don't coincide with what I consider to be happiness, and what many others also consider to be happiness. But there are, of course, many people who are vulnerable and who wish to follow, and there are many people who wish to be led. And this is what the organisation of Jehovah's Witnesses does for people. It gives them an opportunity to, to be guided, to be helped, to be assisted on life's journey. It's an extremely difficult concept, because once you're involved, you're involved, and you can never ever forget that the degree of psychological termination comes to mind, because that's exactly what it is. It's a termination, it's oppression, and a direct assault at your natural feelings, natural desires, and what you wish to be. Why should you be, as a human, someone created apparently in the image of God? According to the Bible, Jehovah said, in the New World Translation, he said Jesus Christ, who is his son, who God gave all his authority and power to create the universe through him. So he had his son, who I consider a puppet, Jesus Christ. And through Jesus, everything else was created. The universe, heavens, the angelic bodies, and obviously us, the physical bodies, and all and what we see in nature. It's a really difficult topic for me to discuss, because there's so much information I want to get out, and I've kept inside for the past 31 years. It's ended me in a situation where I've been bullied, I've been plagued, I've been harassed, I've been completely void of any hope or any future, because I am so indoctrinated and my belief system is so corrupted that I can't escape what has happened. And I'm wondering if this has been done to other witnesses or other people who've been involved in the faith, because for me it's been the worst fucking experience imaginable. I mean, I have no family who support me. Really, they support they do send gifts and that to my son, which is good and commendable. But for me, there's no real what I consider unconditional love. We live on a planet where people are given to their own desires, and their desires are suppressed. And suppression of desire and instinct and base nature and what you want to do in life creates monsters. And we are conditioned by religion, Jehovah's Witnesses being one of them, and the most kind of powerful and the most vigilant in destroying one's true nature and self. If your nature is given to sin, right? You see a pretty girl and you want to have sex, or you look at pornography, or you dabble in drugs, or you have certain desires, you want material possessions and stuff. They say it's not important, but we're conditioned to think it's not important. It makes us feel happy, hence why people always strive for the top. The top is where God's at. So godlike mentality, godlike people, or people of godlike mentality will strive to achieve these things that only God wants to possess. He gives us a world where we have the access to anything that can fill us with fulfill our fleshly desires, everything you can imagine. And it's designed. It's an obvious thing to me to see that God created a world and an alter ego, Satan the devil, to say that if you don't obey me by not indulging in these things, you are going to be destroyed. You're not going to get into paradise, yet alone have my favour. But why would a world be given to us where we are able to fulfill and sate every instinctual carnal desire if we're not meant to be involved? It's pretty much the same principle as the apple on the tree, where it was a test. God said, if you eat the apple, you'll become. Ultimately, they could see good and bad. and they were then corrupted into sin. But this was a test of God, because God wants everything. God wants your whole personality totally adhering to his morals, but ultimately he uses Satan as an alter ego to say, right, this is Satan. Satan provides these things. If you go that route, you're involved in this concept of sin. But the sin concept is natural. The inclinations towards sin are also very natural, and to forbid yourself from them is damaging. Think of the harm it causes when you go into these religious institutes, and you are deliberately blocking your heart and your soul to things that come naturally. You are tested and you are tormented by desires. For instance, homosexuality. Homosexuality, according to the Bible, is an abomination. Think of Sodom and Gomorrah, where the fucking hail and brimstone and shit wiped out the whole city because they were sodomites. You know, those people who are born gay can't help the fact that they're gay. But yet, if you want to become a Jehovah's Witness and you have those feelings, it's not accepted. For instance, and I think that that's a bit cruel, because if you're born a certain way, and I've met many wonderful gay people who are decent and sincere and will do anything for you, but these people are condemned because they give themselves to these so-called immoral desires. Another thing, if you find a mate or a partner in the organisation, you go through the courtship process, and you eventually get married. You get your chaperone wherever you go prior to this to make sure there's no smooching and shit. But once this is, ultimately when you get married, you have to stay with this mate. If you divorce, it's a fucking sin against God, and you can't marry again. Which is also a bit cruel, because if you choose the wrong mate and you find out you're not suitable for each other, you can't divorce. Tough concept. To live in the Jehovah. So anyway, look, I don't want to make this video too long. I just want to see if I can generate some interest into what it means to be a Jehovah's Witness, and the consequences of living with an inbred psychological dynamic that is designed to keep hold of you for the rest of your life. It's fucking deep. I hope this is of interest, because what it's done to me, it's turned me into a drug addict, it's turned me into a fucking real sex addict, because of the suppression, the oppression. Every immoral thought that used to pop into my head when I was a kid, I had to try and block it out, and I used to pray for help and shit, and it never worked. You know, I used to pray sincerely, but I never felt that connection to God. I felt the connection to something else, so I can tell you that, and that was my spirit, and also my sexual desire, which was fucking powerful. You know, and what happens if you block that out, keep pushing, it becomes twisted, it becomes distorted, it becomes perverse. And this was a consequence for me. So now I've been homeless. I've never really had a home. I've moved on lots of places, trying to establish myself. I have had businesses in the past, and I have been able to hustle a bit. I can make money, and I have done things I probably, in society's conventional view, I shouldn't have fucking done, but I did them anyway because I needed to survive, and I wanted a good life, and I felt I was entitled to it. Can't see why not. Anyway, like I said, I've never really had a home. I've never really had any stability. My relationships have all been fraught with turmoil, really. I met my soulmate a couple of years ago, and I absolutely fucking adore her, and we have a beautiful, beautiful son who I would do anything for, something that my dad wouldn't do for me. He would not do anything for me, therefore his love is conditional. I was only able to receive his love if I obeyed, and I subjected myself to his whims and the whims of God, who he was, or the whims of Jesus Christ, the person or the entity, or the illusion that he was following. I wanted to be free, and look what's happened. I've had to leave my country. I was in prison, and I was in insane asylum all because of the indoctrination of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and no one could help me. The only person who could help me is the girl I met a couple of years ago, who actually got me to assess my my belief system to a degree which I couldn't believe possible. At the beginning I thought, no, there's no way she can change my opinions, and this woman did. She really did. She had that thing that enabled me to see life for what it was. And since then my mind has really been blown, and my soul is lost, because I see that things are not quite as they seem, and in the grand scheme, the super illusion, the path that the world is following now, and the people that are coming up, and the conspiracies that are all rearing their heads, things that I used to believe were true and were helpful were never really helpful for me, and I can see why now. Anyway, if you find this of interest, I want to talk because I've got so much I want to say. You know, God, people I've met, people who have influenced me, and who've helped me to change my perception and helped me to like kind of find myself. There's a lot I would love to speak about, and it'd be great for some genuine kind of sincere real life conversation to discuss philosophy on many things. You know, there's so many topics. The real reasons people use drugs, for instance, and why society oppresses them so with such severity. You know, there's theories I've got on these concepts, on these things, and society's ideas, and the way we've been bred, and the lies we've been taught throughout our lives. You know, there's so much to discuss. You know, the concept of sin, that can go on forever. Religion, and why we are the way we are, where we're going, where we're headed, and unfortunately, or fortunately, dependent on the outcome, but who knows what it's going to be, we are heading towards a collision or one world power. It's the only answer. Abolishing religion in its entirety and being one and uniting as a worldwide rational, reasonable race. Anyway, thanks for listening.